The following podcast is for informational purposes only and does not constitute legal, medical, or any type of professional advice. While we strive to provide accurate and up-to-date information, laws and regulations surrounding sexuality, relationships, and consent can vary by location and are subject to change. If you have specific legal or medical concerns, we strongly recommend consulting with a licensed professional in your jurisdiction. Listener discretion is advised, as this podcast may discuss adult themes and sensitive topics. By continuing to listen, you confirm that you are 18 years or older. Welcome to the Siren of Freedom podcast, sounding the alarm by bringing clarity and freedom to the realm of sexuality. Our aim is to give others a place to share their stories and release themselves from the weight of shame and guilt. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Siren of Freedom. I am particularly excited about my guest today because she's part of my ladies group and the first to raise her hand to volunteer to tell us a little bit about herself and her journey to sexual freedom. So welcome, Anna. How are you tonight?
I am doing great, Siren. How are you?
I'm doing good. It was a great day today. You did some running before the podcast, so you're just like amped up and ready to go.
Running and then shower. So now we're winding down. We'll wind down with this.
Perfect. And maybe this is something our listeners do each night, is they have their nightly rituals, and maybe we can become a part of that. So,
Yeah.
so tell me a little bit about yourself, like, tell me about your family dynamic growing up, like mom and dad, single parents, siblings, as
Yeah.
much information as you want to tell.
So I'm an only child. I'm also an only grandchild on both sides of the family. So I have no first cousins. A little bit spoiled, I guess. Kind of grew up on the premise of you can only be told no if you have to ask for things. Never really had to ask. I
That's
just said
awesome.
I want, and it appeared.
Oh my
So
goodness. Well, this will lead to a
yeah.
lot of good questions.
Right.
Right?
So yeah, I did have had mom and dad, very rural area. Actually grew up on a farm, so out in the country. Not a lot going on, not a lot to do. Um, yeah, and my parents are. I mean, I say now they're overgrown field hippies because they just are. My dad has the long ZZ top beard and the long curly hair. He still wears tie-dye and Tevas, and I mean that's just who my parents are.
That's so awesome. They're definitely like living their most authentic life. So, how did that affect you, like having such parents that were, exercising their freedom and authenticity growing up? Were they religious at all or just free spirits?
Um, so my parents were not really all that religious. I mean, we went to church, but mainly because my grandparents on both sides were. So I had one set of grandparents that were Southern Baptist,
Okay.
very Southern Baptist. The other set were Methodist. So, I did grow up in church back and forth, kind of attending each church, with the grandparents. But like I said, really, my parents, we did that essentially with my grandparents, not just because my parents were taking me.
Right.
It was more of a let's just do this as a family on occasional Sundays,
Right.
and of course hit all the holidays.
Yeah. They call them Holly and Lily churchgoers
Yes,
on
yes,
Easter and Christmas.
yes, exactly.
Oh, so man, were you just like in mostly a world too of like a lot of adult figures in your life? I mean, family reunions couldn't have been that crazy if there's
Oh
no
yeah,
cousins to fight with. Like, paint a picture for me of
no.
like what family gatherings are like and you're the only kid.
Well, so I mean, I had one one aunt and one uncle, and neither one of them had children. So, it was I'm kind of the bottleneck of the family. Um, Beyond them, my grandparents had many siblings each.
Mhm.
So I did have some cousins that were further down the line. But I was the youngest. Most of them were, older than me. So, I mean, we did take like a family vacation to the beach once a year, and do some like deep sea fishing and things like that. So I had two female cousins that I saw maybe twice a year, when we did that kind of thing, and they were probably, I'm going to say they were at least 2 to 3 years older than me.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, I mean, and I grew up in a neighborhood of full of boys. There was one other girl in my neighborhood, and we ran around in the woods and we shot bottle rockets at each other out of PVC pipe guns that we made. It was just
We used to do those with those glass like Coke bottles, as we would put them in there,
yes,
and then we would shoot them at each other. Yeah,
yes.
was where I grew up
So I mean, I
was
grew
kind of
up
country too.
yeah, I grew up riding horses and going. I mean, we were in the horse camps on the weekends, and I've herded cattle most of my life.
That is so cool. That sounds like a lot how my parents would have liked to raise us. Had we not been into the whole farming and cattle thing like our parents were like. I think it's because my mom, she wasn't into it. So my dad had this dream, right? And my mom was
Yeah,
like, you can have children or you can have farm animals. And then they chose to have a bunch of kids instead. So
right.
just as expensive to feed, I'm sure, right?
Oh
Um,
yeah, and I've been lucky enough now to raise my kids on the same farm that I grew up on. So that was pretty neat about living in a small town in a small area, and never having really left here yet. Was getting to raise my kids in the same place that I was raised. So that was kind of neat.
Yeah, that's awesome. So let's talk a little bit about, around what age did you start to have like a sexual awareness, hear things about sex? Like, how did that develop since you just had the two female cousins you saw a couple times a year? Sounds like they weren't too much older, so they could probably give you some knowledge. But how did you learn about sex and at what age?
Um, yeah, really. I mean, as a like before teenager, so I'm going to say probably 12, 11 to 12ish. And really probably, as cliche as it sounds, like on the school bus. We live in such a small area that our school buses would would tote everybody from like elementary school all the way through the high school. So I was always exposed to those older kids, at least on the school bus, and things like that. um, and that's kind of where a lot of that really kind of started. And again, with my parents kind of being, and I don't use this term derogatory at all, but they're hippie, and so they were just very chill, and they're calm and relaxed, and nothing was a big deal. And so I didn't really get a lot of, I guess, necessarily like sex education out of them, because it was just like, ah, it is what it is kind of thing. Like, maybe not the best approach to take, but that's kind of how it was.
It's pretty common, it seems, that so far the people that I've interviewed that they really haven't had much um, sex education from their parents. So, but it is interesting to hear kind of like the why behind it or the method to the non method, you know, for the
Yeah.
sex education from parents. So, do you remember like your first, like when you're talking about hearing about it on the school bus? Like, do you remember what you heard or what you learned first? Kind of, can you remember back to that memory?
Yeah. So the first thing that I remember coming home and asking my mom about this, and again, she just kind of like explained to me what it was, and then went on about her business. So the first thing I learned about was or heard about on the school bus was somebody talking about getting a blowjob. And I'm like, well, what is that? Like, I'm probably 11, maybe 12 years old. Um And so that's the first thing that I'm hearing, and I come home and ask my mom, and she pretty much just like matter of factly, not very scientifically, just kind of like, this is what it is, and then just walks off, goes on about her business like it's no big deal.
So what like kind of did she just like she just described it to you in
Yeah,
like 5 words or
yeah,
less?
yeah.
And
Just
then she
just
just
a
acted
handful of
like
words.
yeah, she just acted like, "Oh, what color's the
Yep,
grass?" Right? Green. Okay.
yep,
What's a
yep. Now we're
blowjob?
moving on to the next topic. Yeah,
Yeah. But do you feel
yeah.
like it was like an avoidance thing or just like you said before, just relaxed? She was just like, "Oh, it's part of life."
Yeah, I think it really is just a relaxed kind of thing, because as I've became an adult and had my own children, and I'm obviously very close with both of my parents. Now my parents did separate when I was 10,
Mhm.
but they lived within walking distance of each other, and I pretty much stayed wherever I wanted to stay, whenever I wanted to stay, back and forth. They're still best of friends even to this day. um and they still continued to raise me like it was like there was not really anything different.
Mhm.
Even after they separated, they did I think I was probably, mm, I might have been 21 before they ever divorced. So
Oh,
they
wow.
separated when I was 10.
They're
They didn't even
hippies,
bother.
right?
Yeah,
What does the government
yeah,
need to do with this?
right, right. They didn't, it didn't matter. So um but yeah, so I mean, they're still the best of friends, and they're still both just very chill and laid back. And I get asked all the time where I get my fiery sassiness from, and it's definitely not from either one of my parents. I can promise you that.
Some relative in the past.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So so from there, like what is kind of like the timeline, do you think, before you started being curious for yourself and wanting to know more about sex and sexuality, and how did that progress for you?
So my best friend growing up, her parents and my parents were friends and had been friends since long before either one of us came along. So we all spent a lot of time together. And her and I both just, and her parents, obviously they're just like mine. They're just chill and relaxed, and it is what it is. And so I remember us just kind of, um, just getting in with friend groups and going out and doing things. And so we used to do a lock in at the skating rink, because again, we live in the middle of nowhere, so it's not like there was a whole lot to do. And they would take us and drop us off. And so we're talking amongst ourselves, and these we're probably 13, 14 at this point. um and going to a lock-in with kids of all ages, and starting to experiment with little things here and there in the corners, or in the movie theaters in the dark. And so really, it more came about in just exploration between, like, amongst my little friend group, with other friend groups, more so than learning anything from our parents.
So just talking, was that just like females all together and males all together? Did you guys, kind of mix things up? Like, how did that work? The dynamics there.
Yeah, they're yeah, male and female. And just talking, and a little pinch and tickle here and there, and touching, and just trying to just exploring and figuring things out amongst ourselves.
That's cool, cuz I remember my actual first sexual experience was with another girl during a sleepover. And so I was about 12, and I just remember feeling like, well, this feels good, but like girls aren't supposed to do this stuff with each other. And
Right.
so
Yeah.
then later, talking to my husband now, I was like, you know what? I guess technically you could say that's when I lost my virginity, then, not on my wedding night, because like me and that girl pretty much, had sex at 12. So
Yeah.
it's just interesting looking back and like how, you travel through life and times progress and you learn more, and then you kind of look back at past experiences and go, that's actually
Yeah.
what that was. Um So then at what age did you lose your virginity, and how was that experience for you?
I was 14 before I ever lost my virginity, and my best friend and I, um, my dad had taken us on a vacation, and he might have had a girlfriend at the time, maybe, that went with us. And we were staying in a resort, and we had met a couple of brothers that were very close in our age, and we'd
Like
been hanging out with
like
them. And
brothers like black men, or like brothers like siblings?
they were siblings. They were Italian.
Oh, nice.
Um, yeah, they were Italian and siblings, very handsome, and like I said, pretty close to our age. We were 14. They were probably, I don't they weren't driving, so I don't think they were 16 yet. So they were at least a year older than us. But the resort was a gated, kind of community resort thing, and on a lake, and so it's not like we could go anywhere. So my dad was just letting us hang out with them, and kind of go and do whatever we wanted to do, and that's what we decided we wanted to do.
Yeah, so tell me, I am so into this now. This is like sounding super romantic. I'm kind of jealous of this kind of situation, and then like my daughter's first time, which I talk about on another podcast, but it's like this is shaping up to be a really good story, Anna, and I'm here for it. So please tell me the conversation. You can get a little juicier. It's okay. It's okay. Tell us the story
Yeah,
of
I
like
mean,
how you guys like had this conversation, and then like what went down? Did you
so
kick
we
your
had
dad out
talked
of the
about it.
room? Like what happened?
No, we actually, so we had been at the pool all day, and we'd been hanging out, and so we'd kind of talked about it, the four of us, and I had all kind of talked about it. And so after dinner, they said, they're like villas, so
Mhm.
they're kind of all connected, but in little clusters or whatever. And so their parents were going out for the night, because they also had an older sister, I want to say, maybe. I never really met the older one. So, but there was an older sibling,
Mhm.
that was with them. So their parents were going out. And so we just asked my dad if we could go over to their place and hang out for the evening, and didn't mention that the parents weren't going to be there. And because we'd been
Conveniently.
planning this all
Convenient.
day. Yes.
Right. And you were
Yes.
like you could feel your blood pumping by that point, I'm sure.
Yeah.
At least in
Yeah.
one spot.
And exactly. All in one spot. So yeah, we go over, and it's kind of, I don't know, maybe it's a little comical now, but so my first time was literally like, it was all four of us. It wasn't even just like me and him and her and him. No, we're all in one room. And to look back now, it's kind of like, oh well, that's where I picked that up.
Shh, more on that later. That's so cool. And so how was this
Yeah.
experience? Like how would you like rate it? Like my first time was my wedding night, and I was not impressed. Okay? So I love these
Yeah.
stories of like good times when you lose your virginity.
So I can't say that I was overly impressed, but I wasn't unimpressed either.
Mm.
They he was very patient, very kind, like very gentle. Was not his first time, but he knew it was mine. And so, he didn't rush anything, didn't force anything. And it was able to just kind of happen organically, even though we'd kind of been planning it, all day. But we just allowed things to kind of flow and happen. Um, but yeah, I still, at the end was kind of like, oh, well, that, okay. Like that was not like, it was not
Wasn't
great.
like the
Like that,
movies. He didn't lay you
yeah, I'm
down
like
on a
that,
bed of rose petals.
right. There was no whining and dining,
There
and,
was no
there was,
doves flowing out of you
no,
afterwards.
no, no. And it was kind of like, well, that wasn't uncomfortable, but it wasn't really comfortable either. Like, is that what it's going to be like all the time? Because if that's the case,
Right.
I'm not sure I want to do that anymore.
Right. Okay,
So,
my husband's dying to are you dying to ask something?
Yeah, I wanted to know if there was any sounds like this when you had your orgasm with him or something like that.
Did you have an
no,
orgasm?
no, I did not. I did
Yeah.
not. And really at that point, I probably wouldn't have really known if I did. I can look back now and say, no, I did not.
Mhm.
But at that point then, I didn't know any different to know if I really had or not.
Oh my
So,
goodness. Okay, I have to tell you a quick orgasm story. It's really funny. So, when I was like in junior high, I didn't really understand about what an orgasm was, right? I didn't even equate it with like actually having sex. So, when you hit puberty and there's certain times of the month that you're more, liquidy down there.
mhm.
And my friend, she's like, I had an orgasm. I need to tell you about it. And I was like, what? What did it feel like? And she's like, I don't know. I just looked in my underwear and there it was. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to watch out for that. And then, like, later, I was like, I had an orgasm too. And now I am like, no, I most
No,
certainly did
I did
not.
not. Right.
But just like the misinformation out there, is so common. It's just like I was determined that my children would like know what things were, right? Chill like your mom, but I was
Yes.
kind of prompting, like, hey, you have any questions? Like, you want to talk about anything? Like, I was trying to get my kids to talk and ask
Yes.
questions.
And so I did the same thing with my daughters. Now, my son, that's a different story. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to think about it. My girls, they can bring anything to me, and they have. Trust
Hmm.
me, they have brought a lot. Um and it's no big deal. But my son, nope, that's my baby boy, and I don't want to think about that.
So
I just can't.
who have you had to mentor him then so that he can be set up for success? Well, how like
Oh,
what's the age
Lord.
range? You don't have to tell me his exact age if you don't want to, but
Actually, he will be 18 in 9 days.
okay.
And he is the
So
baby. There,
because
yeah.
girl,
Um,
listen to me as a mom that has boys is very important because you know what? I don't want my son out there embarrassing me, like he gets
no,
with some girl and he doesn't know what he's doing and they're like your mom's like talks about sex all the time and you don't know what you're doing. You know what I mean?
right.
So, like, I talk them through some stuff, and then I send them different men to talk to them, right? But,
Yes. So
yeah, like,
that's
so
what
how
I've
did you
kind of
set them
had to
up for
do.
success? Because if you felt too awkward, then we still
Yeah.
got to help this boy.
Well, I do, and I've had to get everybody else to help this boy because so their father actually passed away when they were all very young. He was a baby when his father passed away. So
Yeah,
um he
so
did
sorry.
I was remarried at once. So he had a stepdad, for a little while, but he was still way too young then. My dad, now again, my dad is super chill, but he will talk about anything with anybody. Um but the best thing that has ever happened for my son is that his uncle, so his dad's brother, he became very protective of myself and my children after his brother passed away, and he has always been in his life. So that is his go-to for everything is his uncle.
Good.
And that's, yeah. So he does have, and he knows, like, I tell him all the time, I don't want to talk about it, but then I tell him, I'm just joking. You can really come to me with anything. And he knows he can, and he does. Um, and his girlfriend comes to me and talks to me a lot. So, I'm good. I'm good with all that. But, I joke with him all the time. I'm like, la, 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 when he starts talking, and then he'll laugh and I'll laugh. And then I listen to what he has to say or any questions that he might have. But, also, I, as part of, I want my kids to be open and feel free enough to be themselves and talk about anything. I may walk through the house in a t-shirt and a thong and ass cheeks hanging out, and my son walking through the house, and some people are like, oh my God, how do you do that? And I'm like, it's no worse than having a bikini on. Like it's my ass cheeks. Like if that offends him, we're gonna have bigger issues. And he doesn't even care. He doesn't even look my way. He's like, oh God, mom, like whatever. So, but I've always, been like that with all of my kids. Like it's your body is your body, and everybody, has relatively similar parts depending on, whether you're male or female, and just it is what it is. So it's not, there's no need to be ashamed and feel like you have to hide anything, especially when we're in the comfort of our home.
Mm-hmm.
So I've tried to keep that freedom, about all of my kids, and so my girls would do the same thing, and he'll run around in his boxers, and it in the house we're all pretty free, and that's one thing
Right.
that I knew. I wanted to make sure that my kids were comfortable with the human body of both sexes,
Right.
because you're gonna experience it at some point.
Yeah. And I mean, my son at 10 was like, why are boobs different sizes? And I said, all body parts are different sizes. So,
Yeah,
your nose, your mouth, your ears, whatever. So
yeah,
that's good to just have that open, flowing conversation about whatever. I just wanted my kids to be able to talk about whatever.
yeah.
So tell us a little bit more, like going after that experience, like kind of how did sexuality develop for you?
I didn't. I mean, I had a couple of boyfriends, and we would mess around here and there. I wasn't quick to just jump right back into having sex, because again, it wasn't that it was a bad experience, but it just wasn't all that grand. And I was like, I can live without that. I don't need that or whatever. Um, and I think I was probably. It might have been in the next 2 years. I might have had two more sexual encounters. So really, between like 14 and 16, maybe those two or three sexual encounters, and that was it. Um, at 16, once I got my license and I was driving, um, all of my most of my friend group were either seniors in high school that year or had already graduated the year before. And so we were partying on weekends. We were hanging out. We were pretty much kind of doing whatever we wanted. Again, my parents were just like, all right, as long as I know where you are,
Mm-hmm.
and what time you're coming home. And they didn't really ask a lot of questions. Um, so, once we were driving, I mean, it was kind of I, there wasn't a whole lot to do. So we would go hang out, or we would go to bonfires, and we would have little parties, and, just kind of experiencing different things from there.
And did you have like, was there a lot of friends in your friend group that had experienced any STDs or pregnancy, or how were the conversations surrounding those topics in your community?
Um, there was not a lot of talk about STDs at all, in our community. There were a couple of pregnancies that happened, when we were 16-ish. Now, I got pregnant at 18. Um, and I graduated high school pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that was not obviously not something I planned, but it happened. And it's I'm now going to be an empty nester at a very young age as well.
Right.
So that's the
There's
that's the
benefits.
blessing. Yes, that's the blessing of it. I'm fixing to be. I'm done in 9 days. As done as you ever are as a parent.
Right.
I've gotten them all to adulthood. And again, I said I've never lived anywhere else. I still live on the same farm I grew up on. So um, I'm moving in the fall. I'm moving
Right.
all the way across the country,
Right. Yeah.
because I can.
Right.
I never got a chance to. So
You're in
now I'm going
for
to get a
a
chance to.
big change and a big adventure based upon, the farm you're talking about to where I know you're moving to. So,
Yes.
it's going to
Yes.
be a big change and hopefully just a lot of fun, and there'll be some
Yeah.
adjustments, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But
I'm ready for it.
what questions do you have, Socrates? As we're keeping this on the lighter side on this side of things. we can wrap up shortly and go to the juicy stuff.
Yeah.
Her,
So
her parents sound awesome. Like,
yeah, I was gonna say the same thing. Your parents sound pretty nice. Do you feel like you were prepared for your sexual life as a result of the way your parents raised you, in the sense that you didn't have a lot of things were that to set you back, like, a lot of bad parenting,
not a
or
lot of shame and guilt.
right, not a lot of shame, exactly. Or do you feel like you
Yeah.
were not prepared enough because they were so laid back and chill?
I say a little bit of both. I think I was a little ill prepared because they were so laid back and chill, and they didn't really, kind of, I guess, get into more particulars of things. Like this is because again, there was no talk of STDs. There was no real talk at the time of pregnancy and things like that. Um, so I think I was a little ill prepared. Now, I mean, obviously, I was not stupid. I knew what I did to get pregnant, but there was just not a lot of talk about it. So I was a little ill prepared in that sense. But also, on the flip side, I think because they were so chill, there was no shame about it.
Right.
Going back to the grandparents. So 18. I turn up pregnant. I don't tell anybody except for my parents. Actually, my mother. I didn't even tell my father initially. Um, so my mother is the only one that knows. I get through my senior prom. I get through my senior exams, and I graduate. So I turn 18 and then I graduate. And at this point now it's kind of like, all right, we gotta figure out what we're gonna do. Right. So I tell my father. um the only thing my father ever said to me, and he's apologized 1,000 times, is I had a 4-year full paid scholarship to go to college that had been awarded to me, that I turned down because I decided to keep my baby.
Mm-hmm.
And the only thing he really wanted was, he just thought that I should have given her up and I should have gone on to college. Um, he has recanted that, like I said, 1,000 times. He has apologized for ever saying that. He is, he goes on and on about what a phenomenal parent that I, have been, and I don't hold any of that against him. Um, my mom never told me what I should do. She just told me, I'm here for whatever you decide to do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the grandparents on the Southern Baptist grandparents, um, my grandmother refused to speak to me after I told her. She refused to be seen with me. Um, it was like I didn't exist. That was just, it
And
was
you
almost like a
kept your baby.
blemish
You
for
didn't,
her.
you didn't
Yeah,
choose,
yeah,
you didn't choose to
yeah.
terminate or anything like that. You chose to keep your baby. You think they would be happy
Yep.
with that.
No, as soon as she knew I was pregnant, it was like it was a blemish on her, and she wanted nothing to be associated with me.
Yeah.
Um,
Do you
and
have
then
any
on,
relationship with her to this day?
so she's passed away now, but as soon as I had my daughter, and well, really before I had her, because my grandfather on that side, he sat her down one day and just said, "Listen, this is our granddaughter, like,
Mm-hmm.
we still love her, no matter what, like, we still love her." And so she kind of let up a little bit, and then as soon as I had my daughter, she totally changed her tune, and she was fine with every bit of it. So I kind of credit him a little bit for kind of breaking her out of that. It was almost like it was about her. And
Mm-hmm.
he had to say to her, "This has nothing to do with you. This is our granddaughter. This is the only
Listen
granddaughter
here,
we have."
Susan. I'm the man
Yeah.
of this house, and you're going to
So,
listen to me, the Lord said, right?
right. And
It,
then,
whatever he said,
the
it
the
worked.
Methodist. Right, it did. It kind of broke her out of that little shell she was in, and she was,
Brought some
whatever.
sense to
But
her.
and then the Methodist grandparents, my grandmother on that side she was like my mom. That's my mom's mom, and she jumped right in, and she just was like, all right, this is what we're doing. We're going to get ready for a baby. We're going to, because now again, like I said, I didn't tell anybody. So by the time I graduated and we started telling people, I was like 6 months along,
Oh,
but I
yeah.
had only
You
gained like
gotta get
3
going.
pounds. Yeah, I'd only gained 3 pounds, so nobody really knew. I was super, super thin in school, and but I'm very tall, so I wasn't really showing. It came very quickly after that, but at this point, I was still able to
Mm-hmm.
hide this from people. So she jumps right in, like this is what we're doing. We got to do this. My grandfather on that side wouldn't look at me. He wouldn't stay in the same room with me. Now, and this man was, as far as he was concerned, I walked on water. There was nothing that compared to me. He's the reason that I am as spoiled as I am, because he never told me no. He never went against anything I wanted. And so now here I am, 18 and pregnant and keeping my child, and he won't stay in the same room with me. Um, and I'll never forget it. I mean, it was that's what hurt me the most. Like, I would walk in their house because I lived next door to them, and he would just get up and leave the room. And it
Mm.
and it killed me. And so when I had her and I'm in the hospital, he and my grandmother were coming back actually from one of her brother's funerals, and they had left the funeral and were coming back, and they had to pass the hospital to go home, and it was the day after I'd had my daughter. And so they stopped by the hospital. She walks in, she gives me a hug, she gives me a kiss, she's standing there talking to me. He walks in, walks past the foot of my bed, still never looks at me, to the other side of my bed, reaches in the bassinet, picks up my daughter, sits in the rocking chair, starts rocking her and singing to her the way he always did to me. Then he starts crying, and he looks up at me and he said, "You did good." And those were the first words he'd spoken to me since he found out I was pregnant.
How'd that make you feel in that moment?
Oh Lord, I lost it.
Oh,
I
I
mean,
bet.
like, like I said, I was like his best friend. I mean, the man he didn't buy a boat or a camper or a horse trailer or anything that I didn't approve. He would go pick something out, and he would tell the salesman, "I'll be back with my granddaughter, and if she likes it, I'll buy it." I mean, that's just how we were. So for him
Mhm.
to not speak to me for 3 months, I mean, it was heartbreaking. But that's the first words he said to me was, "You did good."
Yeah,
And then
that's
it was like
beautiful.
nothing had ever happened. Yeah. So I mean, it all worked out in the end. But
Right.
yeah, that
Just
goes
that
back to
time,
those
that's hard.
religious
You already
grandparents.
have all
Yeah,
those
it was.
hormones from first the hormones that got you into that situation, right?
Yep.
And then the
Yep.
hormones from and the stress from hiding it, and
Oh
then
yeah.
all of that, those emotions. So where are your kids kind of at with, without giving too much about, their story, but where do you kind of feel that all of this like tied into what you taught with your kids? We talked a little bit about that, and kind of where you are now with sexuality. Like, if you could kind of go look back over your life of like your sexual journey, like what other milestones would you say, without getting into the good stuff too
Right.
much? Are there any other
Well,
significant milestones, like, with conversations with your family, with your kids, or, what you've
yeah. So
grown into
my
that you want to
oldest,
share?
my my oldest daughter, I actually have two granddaughters. So my oldest daughter has two little girls. Um, and I'll I'll never forget. I was actually sitting with a friend one day, and she FaceTimed me, and she's squalling. I mean, just like bawling her eyes out. And I'm like, "What is wrong?" And she says, "I have to tell you something." And I'm like, "Okay, well, I'm sitting here with," and I tell her I'm sitting with. She's like, "Well, I don't know if she wants to hear this." And I'm like, "Well, it's fine. I mean, like, whatever, just let's do this." And so now this is, mm, not quite a year ago, maybe a little less than a year ago. And she just busts out crying again. And I'm waiting, and I'm letting her catch her breath. And I'm like, "Oh Lord, she's pregnant again. Like, what are we gonna do now?" And and I really don't know what to expect out of her. And then the next thing I know, she was like, I don't like men anymore. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, I mean, you've had a rough go. And she was like, no, I'm a lesbian. I was like, okay. And she goes, really? That's it? And I said, yeah. I mean, do you need me to react negatively to this? And she goes, I just didn't know what to expect. And I said, honey, I don't, you do you. Like I'm here for I'm here for whatever. I'm here for it. Let's talk about it. And so, she gathered herself, and we had this conversation, and she's had a couple of girlfriends since, and finally really is feeling like she's fitting in to her own skin and to her life. So, I'll never forget the first, several months that we were kind of going through this, and she just kept asking, like, are you sure you're okay with this? And I'm like, well, yeah, it's not, I don't have to be, oh, it's not me, it's not my thing to be okay with, but yeah, I'm okay with it. Like, I love you for who you are. And, and she was, what about the girls, and what do I tell them? And I'm like, you just talk to them the way I've always talked to you guys. You just got to be real with them. They're little, but you got to be real with them. It's okay. They'll learn, and they'll adapt, and they'll grow from, positive experiences. And so,
Right.
that's
And from their mom
that's been
being
the
happy, I mean,
yes.
whatever kind of relationship that we're seeking, it's like, I think that our kids, they don't like the conflict. They want us to be happy, and they want to see
Yeah.
happy parents too. Do you have something to say,
Yep.
Socrates? No, he's just like, listen. I really like this story. Like, this is exciting, because this is only, we're within our first 10 episodes, right? But I just
Yeah.
am so excited because, like, so far, I've just really enjoyed everybody's story of, just their sexual journey and different points along the way. And there's always been just some little surprise or thing, just learning about people. So it's been really cool.
Yeah.
So, do you have anything else that you want to add before we wrap up this segment?
No, I mean, that's about me in a nutshell.
I love it.
Until we get to the juicy stuff.
Right? So, if you want to hear the juicy stuff, which that's why I didn't really dive too much into Anna's adulthood, then you can hear it on the Patreon side. All right. Well,
Yes.
Anna, we've certainly enjoyed having you as a guest, and we will talk to you on the other side, the After Dark. Thank you so much for listening today. We hope this podcast has been an encouragement to you. You can find us on our website, thesirenoffreedom.com, and also on social media and Patreon under the Siren of Freedom podcast. Your support is what helps us continue to sound the alarm of freedom.